So, recently, Bandai has revealed a new VOTOMS anime to celebrate 50 years of Bandai. Among other things, because there's like a new Pet Labor too, I think, but I don't really know Pet Labor. Yes, I don't know Pet Labor, okay? Right? Shut up, right? I'm not gonna say anything about it because I don't know anything about it, okay? Anyway, from the teaser they release, we see the Scope Dog in all its glory, wheeling across in a jungle environment. Now, if you look closely, right, the animation is like so much smoother. I guess that's a given, right? Considering how about there's like almost 2 decades of animation technology developed now compared to like heck is it called Palestine files. Like if you look if you just look closer, you can just see like the micro movements, and they didn't have to do like the head kind of moving a bit when the targeting scope was moving around, but they did, right? And it's also less snappy as well, right? And just the modeling as well is so good. Just look at the details. You can see like the rivets, everything. It's less like flat. There's more details and everything. Now I guess that's like that might be that might be a subjective thing. Some people like what do you call that, simplicity. Others like all complexity. Like I just depend. For me, it just depends on how it looks. And I think it looks fine with the whole thingies. Also, that's a new gun model. This looks nothing like we've seen before. It looks like an M4 of a top magazine. There's no gun that looks like this. I mean, there are guns that are top fed, but they don't look like an M4. Excuse me. Other than that, evidently, these guys aren't red shoulders because, lo and behold, they don't have any red shoulders. So maybe we're not following Kiriko, but maybe we are. Maybe this like post what do you call that, post red shoulder, because he was still in the military before after red shoulder is disbanded. But no, maybe we still follow him, maybe we don't follow him, or maybe we do follow him, who knows. Maybe it's complete new cast. There's this logo on the chest though I don't think we've ever seen before. It kind of looks like the Silver Society cross, but I don't think it is Silver Society cross. It's got that kind of slash at the edge going on there, showing like it goes kind of looks like a Nazi symbol now I think about it. Anyway, it's coming sometime this year. I'm not entirely sure when, but I can't wait. So what is VOTOMs, you may ask? If you don't know what VOTOM is, well, I'm just gonna I can do a quick introduction as to what VOTOM is. Okay, VOTOMs is set in the Astragalus galaxy. We don't know whether humanity came into this galaxy from the Milky Way, or if this galaxy is the birthplace of humanity in this universe, but it's most likely, this is the birthplace of humanity in this universe. Approximately 180,000 years ago, the first civilization emerged on the planet Quent. The Quentians were a race of tall humans standing at least 2 meters, known for their superior intelligence, physical prowess, and, most of all, their exceptionally long lifespans. The average Quentian can be expected to live for about 800 to 1,000 years. Due to those traits, the Quent civilization was the most advanced the galaxy had ever seen. Even the current powers of the Astragalus galaxy could not match the level of technology the Quent had. Examples of Quentian technology are anti-gravity, supercomputers, and teleportation. But even with the superiority, the Quentians had a strict policy of non-interference. They only engaged in peaceful trade, tourism, and scientific exchanges with any races they encountered. This continued for about 3,000 years, the beginning of their downfall. Major Ra Roshato of the Quentian Defense Organization led a small group of radicals that believed themselves to be gods and were destined to rule the galaxy. Under Roshato's command was a scientist named Ru Tayara. Ru led a biological enhancement project to create the perfect soldier. Their plot was soon discovered by the wider Quentian civilization, and they were immediately suppressed. After a year of investigation, their plot was brought to light. It was discovered that every member of this radical group had undergone Ru Tayara's enhancements, which had made them develop an instinct for war and a radical desire for perfectionism. But the biggest discovery of all was their ability to synchronize with their supercomputers at a biological level. allowing them to communicate their thoughts using digital optic and sonic patterns. Disturbingly, these radicals were preparing to enhance the rest of the Quentian race to turn them into a warlike people. The radicals, or Overmen as they're now called, were then separated and banished to the frontiers of the galaxy. While the Overmen threat had been defeated, at least for now, it was made clear that the technology they possessed was far too powerful for anyone to have. They may have stopped the Overmen threat, but what is to say there won't be another, far more successful plot in the future? In the interest of the greater good for the galaxy, the Quentians unanimously decided to forgo technology for the rest of their existence. All their massive facilities were left abandoned for the sands to bury them. Their people began a slow intellectual degradation, leaving the modern Quentian to be primitive, desert-roaming traders who deal with material salvage from long-forgotten ancient technology. But they still possess some manufacturing capabilities, as they can and do produce their own ATs for use by their mercenaries. The decisions to banish the Overmen might have been the wrong one. The scattered mutant race almost immediately began to try to uplift the primitive populations of the planets to which they were banished. This was in the hopes of being able to return to their home planet and continue their plans. While many failed, whether due to old age, losing control of their people, or taking their own lives from despair, some succeeded. After some 2,000 years of controlling their respective populations, the Overmen were finally able to re-establish contact with the rest of their banished race. However, it was not a celebrated moment. For the 2,000 years of their exile, the surviving Overmen refused to interbreed with the local population in the belief of keeping their blood pure. This has left their gene pool small and full of genetic diseases. Their lifespans were shorter, their bodies were deformed, and their numbers were rapidly decreasing. The Overmen were soon to be extinct. When they finally arrived at Quent, instead of the heart of the most advanced civilization, they were met with a desert wasteland inhabited by simple people living in villages deep inside crevasses. Their plan to reinvigorate their species and conquer the galaxy was not impossible, but instead of giving in to their fate, the Overmen decided to carve a new one. The Overmen descended on the planet and began excavating the ancient sites of supercomputers. Eventually, they found one still in relatively working condition. They then attached plasma storage devices to transfer their collective consciousness into their new biocomputer, Wise Man. As Wise Man, the Overmen began plotting to realize their ultimate goal. Through their agents, Wise Man masterminded a plan to steadily weaken the two major powers of the Astrogeus galaxy, the Ballarat Union and the Gilgamesh Confederation, by inciting war between them. Two galactic wars were fought in the span of 500 years, the third beginning 500 years later. The story of VOTOMS begins just as the third war was ending in the year 7213. We follow Kiriko Kuvi, a soon-to-be former soldier of Gilgamesh, who, for his entire life, has only known war. One day, he was transferred to a new squad that conducted an operation against friendly forces. It was here that Kiriko's destiny would be set. During the mission, after tirelessly begging his commanding officer to explain why they were doing this, he would find and meet a woman encased inside a tube. She was bald! What happens next? Well, I'm not telling you, right? Go watch the anime if you want to know his journey, right? We're not here for Kiriko, right? We are here for VOTOMS, or Vertical One-Man Tank for Offensive Maneuvers. It is the primary ground weapon system used first by the Gilgamesh Confederation and later by the Ballarat Union. These humanoid tanks are actually a relatively recent development in this universe, making their first appearance some 30 years ago, before the start of the main story. So in the 1,000 years of civilization, like, it was only within this third war, right, that mechs, like effectively mechs, came to existence. As far as has been said that even the Quent didn't have these things and they were like the most advanced guys. I mean, they probably didn't need mechs if they can achieve teleportation and all that. But yeah, but before ATs, wars were fought conventionally, you know, with infantry and armored vehicles, you know, and for space you get, you know, spaceships and planet-destroying weapons. Well, not really planet-destroying weapons, is that the war destroyed planets. There was one planet apparently the atmosphere just gave up. Gilgamesh began development of the technology in the 4th month of 7183. Back then, they were called Machine Troopers, or MT. This project was spurred in the hopes of making Gilgamesh soldiers worth multiple Ballarat ones, as Gilgamesh was a small nation of the two. Early MTs leave a lot to be desired as they were barely armored, if at all, and were prone to malfunctions. Pilots were left exposed to the elements, mechanical components were also exposed, and the muscle cylinders kept seizing. However, despite these issues, the speed, strength, and psychological impact of these giant humanoid weapons were deemed a worthwhile pursuit, and development was further pursued. It took almost 10 years of development before the first deployment of MTs. Beginning with the original MT-X02 Machine Trooper, then the MT-03 ST Mechanical Trooper, which, weirdly enough, looked a lot more bare bones than the original prototype, and finally, the MT-04 Magical Doll. The Magical Doll was the first MT to be sortied for a mission. In 7192, a riot had been ongoing on the planet of Melkia. The local police have been unable to quell the unrest among workers at a Gigerium manufacturing plant for the past decade. Gigerium is it's basically silicon, right? It's like a mineral used for like computers and stuff like that. It's basically this universe's silicon. It's quite important. A squad of 32 MTs was deployed to quell the unrest, and they successfully did so within 2 weeks. Following this, Gilgamesh began the integration process of this new technology into their military. By bringing in technicians from Melkia to assist with development, the muscle cylinders were significantly improved and the armor was strengthened. This resulted in the machine trooper being more akin to a tank. This is where the technology was officially designated VOTOM, or more commonly, Armored Trooper, AT. But do not let that name fool you. These things, unless it's piloted by an important name character, get destroyed pretty easily. Yes. Without plot armor, these things are not... Do you know how thick the armor of this thing is? This, like, the average thickness of an AT, like at the thickest point, usually the chest, I guess the front, is like 15 millimeters. 15 millimeters. Do you know what has more armor than 15 millimeters? Than these things? A BT-7. A BT-7, a pre-World War II Soviet tank, has 20 millimeters of armor. It has more armor than these AT things. Granted, maybe the ATs are made from a material that's a lot more denser than steel, because, 20 millimeters of paper, still a lot easier to go through than 20 millimeters of steel, let's say. But still, 14, 15 millimeters, that's not a lot. The thickest that I can recall is like 100 millimeters. That's still not that thick. I'm just saying. I mean, I guess 100 mil is pretty thick. I guess even like most World War II tanks don't have that much. So I guess 100 millimeters is okay, I guess. But the average is like 15, which is like unbelievable. Like, I'm not kidding. Like these... Like, they have, like, handguns. It's not really a handgun. It's more like a hand cannon. A hand cannon that basically every pilot uses. And this thing can punch through, like, 20 millimeters of armor at 40 meters. The ATs can be defeated by a handgun. Granted, you need to actually hit one. These things aren't the slowest thing. They're quite fast. So, yeah, sure. Maybe hitting one will be hard. But if you do hit one, you're gonna hit. It's gonna go through pretty easily. Also, speaking of plot armor, that is actually a phenomenon in this universe. That's like a canon thing that happens in this universe. Kiriko, right? He's like 1 in a billion or couple of billion of people who has like this gene. I forgot what it's called, like abnormal survivor gene or something. Basically, this gene has been described as literally being like it just functions in the pose of life or something like that. It just functions, I guess, in natural order. So plot armor is a thing that just exists and is a scientific phenomenon in this universe. And you know what? I can accept that. Right? If the universe has something that says like These people actually can't die because they were born with a gene that somehow protects them. Sure, I can accept that. What I can't accept is when normal people living in a normal world who don't have like a scientifically proven phenomenon where plot armor is a thing, they just survive everything. Kira Yamato surviving an explosion under his ass. I don't like that. Anyway, the AT-02, 03, and 05 were the first models the military received. Military leaders were not impressed initially, but after the Battle of Dalian in 7195, when the first large-scale use of ATs on the battlefield occurred, it was then that the Gilgamesh military accelerated the adoption of the technology. Special Forces AT teams were quickly established to help with the development of the technology and their tactics. From this point on is when true modern ATs took form. Armored troopers are split into three main categories: light, mid, and heavy. The mid class is the stereotypical AT, is what most would think when AT is mentioned. Mid ATs function as the backbone of both militaries and tend to be multifunctional in design. What is considered the first true AT, the ATM-01 Clever Camel, belong to this class, as do the infamous ATM-09 Scope Dog and its Ballarat counterpart, the BATM-03 Fatty. Mid-class ATs can be outfitted with a variety of weapons and equipment. Most carry either a form of an AT assault rifle or a rocket launcher. These ATs were the most prevalent during the last few decades of the 100 Years' War and were responsible for most of the damage that occurred on both sides of the conflict. A part of the peace treaty stipulated that the majority of mid-class ATs were to be decommissioned, while the remaining ones were to be limited to a certain number. Due to this, many mid-ATs post-war were used for expendable projects or flooded into the civilian and black market. Many mercenaries and battling gladiators operated this class of ATs due to the sheer abundance, making finding parts and repairs easy. Heavy ATs were the next development. Heavy ATs were, in many ways, very similar to mid-ATs. The primary difference between two classes is a thicker armor, stronger muscle cylinders, and onboard power generators, allowing the AT to carry heavier equipment. This does come at the cost of speed and maneuverability. Heavy ATs were typically used for city fighting or environments where movement is limited. During missions expected to be against regular forces, pilots tend to choose heavy ATs over light ones, as maneuverability isn't as important of a factor as armor is, as pilots are expected to be ambushed at any given moment. Heavy ATs were not limited by the peace treaty and continued their service as normal. They were typically reserved for riot control duties in their post-war life. The light class is a very recent development. By utilizing the now matured and refined muscled cylinder technology, particularly those from the Scope Dog, it is hoped that combining them with a smaller, lighter, and simpler chassis would increase the maneuverability, reliability, and scale of production. This was likely to offset the limitations on mid-ATs incurred by the peace treaty by having a large quantity of light ATs instead. This, of course, has the obvious drawback of having less armor and inbuilt systems. For example, the Zwerg, the only light AT example we see actually, lacks gliding wheels, instead having to rely on a separate ski system to provide high-speed travel. Variations of AT models are usually indicated by additional suffixes. Suffixes including ST, standard model, WP, waterproof, BTC, battling custom, BTS, battling special. I don't know what's the difference between custom and special, but okay. X, experimental, and FX, future experimental. What's the difference? Well, future experimental is developed for a future war, while experimental is probably something that's like short term. That's how I understand the explanation. Anyway, Ballarat and Quent ATs are denoted with B and Q respectively. Now, hopefully you know what a VOTOM or AT is, so let us move on to how they function. We got a pretty good cannon cutaway of a Scope Dog here. The Scope Dog is considered the standard of ATs, so most would likely share the same internal structure of it. We'll start from the top to the bottom. At the tippy top, we get an antenna. For what? A 100-kilometer range radio. Moving down the head, we see the eyes of an AT, or zoom lens. On the scope dog, the lens is placed on a rail that allows the device to move about 180 degrees horizontally. Very similar to like the Zaku from Gundam. ATs can't really look up, though they need to bend backwards if you want to look up. This rail is also placed on a flippable visor, which can be opened so the pilot can get the clearest view outside. It's like how, tank crews, they stick their head out of like the armored compartment so they can see better, even though they got like all the computers inside, Sometimes the good old peepers does a better job, so this is at the risk of getting their head blown off, but it's better than getting your whole crew blown up. I don't know. Interestingly, that was a precursor of the scope dog called the Stray Bear that had a glass visor. The ones with a glass visor were early production models before they switched to the current armored visor configuration. You can probably guess why they made that change. But not all ATs have the same level of head movement. For example, the standard tortoise, obviously, it can't move its head at all because it doesn't really have a head. The zoom lens itself has a visual range of 2 kilometers and features 3 modes that it can switch to. The main camera is the big lens, the one that looks like a DSLR lens. The red one, I'm not entirely sure, but it's most likely infrared. And the tiny one below, I think is the wide view lens? When we see Kiriko flip it, it looks like wide, so I'm assuming that's a wide view. It's like a short range lens as well. But I'm pretty sure it's also some kind of tight beam laser, like a light signal too, because I'm pretty sure that there was a scene where there was light coming from it for like long distance communications or something like that. If I can find the scene again, I'll put it up here. Anyway, other sensors include passive detectors for metal, electromagnetic waves, audio, radar, sonar, and something called a vibration pulse generator. If Google is telling me the right thing and I'm understanding this correctly, it's something about converting electricity into vibrations. So, a seismic scanner maybe? High-performance models also feature a highly sensitive multi-pulse Doppler system, which covers a full 360-degree arc and has a range of 20 kilometers. Some ATs, like the purple bear, which I like because I like its face and it's purple, have stereoscopic sensors. These sensors give the pilot better depth perception and double the maximum range at the cost of weight and the alternate view modes such as IR. So this thing doesn't have any IR, just have better eyes, I guess. Quant ATs use quantum sensors, which are regarded as the best in the galaxy. Moving down to the chest, we first start with the cockpit. For a pilot to enter the cockpit, the whole top half of the AT will flip up. They then will climb in, flip up the control sticks, which will also close down the hatch, sealing the pilot in. Now I say sealing, but I don't think ATs have light support systems, or at least they have like very basic ones. This is entirely based on the fact that, the pilot's suit is like sealed, and it has its own oxygen tank with like 20 minutes of air. But, I guess unless you're operating in a hazardous environment like space or whatever, I guess you don't really need the oxygen tank. But if you are, you only got like 20 minutes of air, which is not that long. Speaking of pilot suits, though, the Bellerin one looks awesome. Look at it. I like it. Kind of looks like Javelin. It's basically a salad. Anyway, the pilot will then have to connect their helmet to the AT via a cable. This will connect the helmet's goggles to the AT's head and zoom lens. So, to look around, you actually have to turn your head inside the cockpit. ATs do appear to have some level of voice command functions. We see Kiriko in this scene telling his AT to switch his rifle into full auto mode by saying it aloud. Also in the cockpit is the central computer. In the case of the scope dog, the Moicat 128 CPU. This computer holds an AT's mission disk. Mission disks are essentially the brain of the AT. It tells the AT how to move, how much it can rotate its joints, which button does what, etc, etc, right? These disks are usually prefab into a standard configuration, but experienced pilots tend to run custom disks they write themselves. Mission disks can also take full control of an AT and pilot it automatically. Goto sent one as a decoy, while Kiriko ambushed the Udo police from their flanks. Moving down into the back of the torso, we get the main systems of the AT, its battery and muscle control systems. ATs, light and mid classes at least, are battery powered. Heavy ATs carry internal power generators so they can go on for an extended period before needing to recharge, if they even need to do that at all. I can't really find out how long a battery lasts, unfortunately. Surrounding the battery are the PRS purification packs and the pumps that control the muscle cylinders. What is PRS? PRS, or polymer ringer solution, is essentially the hydraulic fluid that expands and contracts the muscle cylinders. This solution is pumped throughout the body of an AT before returning to their packs for purification and recycling. This cycle process will eventually break down the solution. The Scope Dog, for example, has a PRSP life of about 218 hours. This liquid is flammable, which probably explains why these things just explode if they get flicked. Some people have tried to modify the solution by making their own, either to extend its life, increase its performance, or to make it more suitable for a local environment. Daria Kochak made a solution capable of withstanding negative 285 degrees Celsius. Beyond that, the torso has radiators and also a sub-battery. Onto the arms. The arms consist mainly of muscle cylinders. Muscle cylinders are just hydraulics made to mimic human biomechanics. Heat generated from the cylinder movements is converted into electricity and fed back into the battery to prolong its charge. The only thing noteworthy for the arms is the arm punch system. This system is seen on most mid and heavy ATs, with light ones seemingly not having any. While there are other melee weapons such as claws and a pile driver, the arm punch is the most common. This system involves shooting a gas-filled cartridge, which will then propel the forearm forward with high force. A single punch is enough to completely cave in the torso of an AT. An arm can hold 4 cartridges before having to reload with a new magazine. Finally, we have the legs. Stop unzipping. Similar to the arms, the legs mostly consist of muscle cylinders. When an AT is in standby mode, the legs will lock up before the thighs and shin ratchets forward, bringing the torso down. This makes climbing in way more manageable. Bellarmine ATs actually just sit down in their standby mode. This movement can also be used as some kind of shock absorber to dampen the impact felt from parachutes or hard landings. But of course, the most well-known aspect of an armored trooper is in their feet. I said stop unzipping! The feet of most ATs contain 2 important systems that give the AT its infamous motive system. The feet of many ATs contain a gliding wheel, wheels that are powered by coreless motors, which allow many ATs to skate across the ground at incredibly high speeds. The wheels of the Scope Dog produce 230 horsepower with 51 kg-meters of torque, and can propel it up to 83 km per hour. The other system is a turnpick. The turnpick is a pile driver that functions as the brakes and for quick directional changes. It also allows you to do this. The motive system differs from one model to another. Some ATs come with a pair of wheels on each foot. Battalion ATs don't even use wheels. They instead rely on hoverjets. The legs also differ depending on the environment. The snow version of the Scope Dog has visibly larger feet, which houses a blower system to push away snow. Swamp or amphibious ATs like the diving beetle, which is like top 2 for me, easily, have clogs instead of wheels. The claws will deploy a plate beneath their feet and also a paddle wheel that propels the AT across wet environments. There are purpose-built vehicles for ATs, with most examples we see made for space or atmospheric use. You have the ATP FPH-05 descent pod, which is commonly used by all ATs during drop operations. The ATCBR-03S dog carrier is a similar vehicle optimized for Scope Dogs only. This carrier can carry 2 Scope Dogs, with one effectively serving as a standing platform for the other. The Zwerg Light AT has its own carrier system in the form of the Sand Roader. And mid-ATs can operate heavy weapons platforms called the ATC AFV-02 Armored Flying Vehicle, which is armed with twin large-bore cannons. First foray into VOTOMs, and I hope I did good. This is like better than usual, hopefully, because I did spend like an entire week on the script for this one. Instead of like the usual 2 days, I finally took my own advice of cooking, as they say. I cooked this thing. Hopefully, it came out good, because sometimes, even if you cook hard, sometimes it don't come out good, which is just an unfortunate fact of life. But hopefully, this came out as good as it can be, because again, I spent like an entire week. Usually, I spend 2 days on the script, maybe 3 at most. But yeah, I spent the whole week just researching what I can, rewatching as well. I'm not done with VOTOMs. I'm not done with it, but I'm currently rewatching again. But I think I got everything that that is like relevant to this. So hopefully I didn't miss any. If I did, oh god. But yeah, I just spent this entire week just reabsorbing VOTOMs again, because it's been a while, and I didn't expect a new series to come out like this year. But that's cool. Can't wait to see that one whenever it comes out. A bunch of other stuff as well, like the Pet Labor. Again, I didn't watch that, unfortunately, so I don't know what that. I know it's about police mech, and other than that, I don't really know. I don't know why. It just doesn't seem like something I would be interested in. But maybe it is good. Maybe it's not good. Who knows? It probably is good. I mean, why would they remake it, right? God, I'm probably pissing a lot of people off by saying that. It's potentially not good. But yeah, I was gonna do some ATs in this one, but I thought maybe that could be his own video, right? We can do that there later on. But that's it for this week, my fellow Jovins. Thanks for joining. I'm also trying to become a little bit nicer, less swearing. Hopefully, I don't swear in a bit and be a mean butt. But anyway, yeah, if you like what you saw and would like to see more, please join the fleet. Join the fleet by clicking that red button down below. And if you can't do that because military life is a bit hard, then I understand, right? Scary life, you can get shot and die. Maybe you can just click like, right? So people braver than you become military, will join the fleet and become pilots and pilot cool mechs while you sit back and enjoy your rich, peaceful life. I got a Discord if you want to talk to me or anybody else. That's the Jovian PA system. That's where we communicate with each other. And I also stream my gaming. I mean my training sessions. Yes, training sessions. I'm doing a lot of training sessions, different training sessions recently. So that's good. Diversity. Yes, glory to Jupiter Colony. Glory to my fellow Jovians and everyone else. Take care of yourselves. Fight those Earthnoids. Yes, I changed it. Don't die. That came out way too early, but don't die.